Hey guys, welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by my co-host Drew. I almost said best friend. I mean, it's true, but by my co-host Drew.
I was hoping you were going to say lover.
Not sure where that came from.
No. Just tell him.
We're glad you're here. Drew especially is glad you're here, apparently. He's feeling extra wild today, and today we have something new to talk about that everyone's been complaining. We're not talking baseball. Well, we're talking baseball today. We are not going to miss it. We're also going to be going into everything going on from the trade deadline, where it leaves the MLB going forward. I know you've been waiting for it, but this is where baseball picks up, is after the trade deadline, in my opinion. This is where the pretenders get weeded out, and we finally see those 4 or 5 teams on each side of the aisle that are actually legit contenders in the playoffs.
Ian, we want 2 number ones, large fry, 2 large Dr. Peppers, and get me like 4 of those 50-cent tacos. Appreciate it, Ian.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Give me 3 of those. Give me 3 of whatever he said. Just triple it. We're also going into the Hall of Fame game. Just real quick, football is back, Drew. Hallelujah, man. I can't tell you how tough this summer has been, just waiting for football to come back. Obviously, we've always had something to talk about. There's always something going on in the news.
Right.
But now the mystery is gone. It's out of here. We know we're going to have something to talk about as soon as preseason starts.
Before we get into Before we get into that, I mean, does the Hall of Fame game excite you? With
yes.
kind of what
it always does.
What happened with, like, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, where the field was just a disaster.
Mm-hmm. And I still watched every minute of it. It didn't matter. It matters right now. And then next week, I'll be like, man, the preseason is too long. I'm tired of this. Let's get to real football. Get to something that matters. But for now, yeah, 100%. I'm going to watch every minute of it. There's going to be guys out there I've never heard of making tackles. There's going to be guys out there catching touchdowns nobody's ever heard of and we'll probably never see again. But it does not matter to me because it's football. It's the NFL. It's back, baby. I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be great. Again, I think Denver's a good team for it, especially when you talk about that quarterback controversy they have. Maybe we see Flacco a little bit longer. Maybe we see Drew Lock, and that's my big question here. My big takeaway from this game is going to be how much of him do we see, and how good is he going to be? And does that matter?
Oh, man.
That was like 12 questions. You got all that?
Yeah. I think you'll see Flacco maybe for like a quarter of the first quarter, and then he'll probably be pulled, and you probably won't see Matt Ryan at all.
Yeah, I don't even know that you'll see Flacco for half a quarter. I think it'll probably still be the
quarter
one drive.
Of the first quarter.
Oh, okay. I think it'll be one drive. Maybe you get the second drive.
Maybe the second drive.
Right. I think that's fine if I see that in the starting offense with Flacco out there, or maybe you see Flacco with the twos for a little bit. Maybe they say, we want to see what you look like working with the guys Drew Lock's about to be working with. I think that would be good from a head coaching standpoint, because if Flacco comes out and stinks with the twos, it kind of puts it in perspective that when Drew Lock comes out and stinks with them too, that you're like, okay, maybe it's our receivers aren't good enough. Maybe it's just, but if Flacco lights it up, and then you look and see Drew Lock struggle, you're like, okay, there's still a
to me,
talent
it's not that. It's more, how long do you keep an older quarterback out there who just came off an injury? You know, why would you stick him out there to get injured again?
Because he's gonna have to play a lot of snaps. He's gonna have to play a lot of snaps here soon. That was like a Chewbacca noise. I'm not sure what that was.
It was my daughter.
Yeah. He's going to have to play a lot of snaps for the regular season. You're telling me one drive is going to make the difference? I think you can't play scared. I understand that you want to limit the guys and their exposure, especially in a 5th preseason game that's not going to make any impact on this season at all. This is purely for the fans. But I think one extra drive doesn't hurt him. And if it does, then obviously he's not durable enough to be your quarterback to begin with, right?
Right. I mean, definitely. Shrey says you're going to see a lot of Drew Lock. He says Joe Flacco will be the starter.
And we agree. But we're saying, how long should Flacco play? Is it just the one drive? See, I like Denver as a team here, but I don't like Atlanta because they don't have these questions, right? You now know Devontae Freeman's the running back. You now know Matt Ryan's the quarterback. There's nobody to challenge these guys. They have nothing to gain from this game at all. In fact, they have everything to lose because this entire squad was injured last year.
Yeah, you're not going to see him for very long. I think he will play just because, you know, they get 5 preseason games. Flacco's in a new offense the first time ever in his career. You need him to get reps. So he's going to play. It's not going to be for long. And Shrey's right. I mean, Locke's going to be a long, long time. But I do disagree that he's saying Flacco will lead the Broncos in the playoffs or playoff hunt. I completely disagree with that. There's 2 teams that are better than them in their own division. They're going to be struggling just to
They might not be better than Oakland.
Yeah, they're going to be struggling.
I think they're better than Oakland.
They'll be struggling to find wins. That's, in my opinion, I mean, I get that Denver plays the Chiefs and the Chargers really tough, but in my opinion, that's two losses each. That's 4 losses.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Joey, good to see you, man. He says his Cowboys are going to win it all this year. Book it, with or without Zeke. This is their year. I like them, but I think this road gets a lot tougher without Zeke Elliott. I think we're going to see that passing game slow down a little bit without that constant threat of Zeke busting off a big run in that backfield. I'd be worried about that. That, to me, is still 100% the Cowboys' biggest issue that they have to solve. Get Zeke wrapped up quick so he can get back in training camp and get on the same page as everybody else as soon as possible.
Joey, I hate to burst your bubble, man, but you need Zeke. After that, dude, it would not surprise me if we see the Cowboys in the playoffs. That defense is stellar, and with a great run offense, oof, man, it's a scary team.
Yeah. Also, Sharif says the AFC West is the toughest division in football. I know we've talked about this. No.
Yes.
They've got 2 great teams, but they also have 2 teams that don't have a lot of mystery to them. I think the NFC North is tougher when you want to go top to bottom. When you've got teams like the Bears, the Packers, and Vikings who are both playoff threats, even Detroit, where they're making moves, right?
Yeah.
I think the NFC North is a tougher division, and probably the AFC East.
Sharif's saying enough with Zeke.
I was kidding, NFC East. Not the AFC. That was a joke. You're supposed to react to that. Tom Brady does not have a hard road to the playoffs again.
I wasn't listening to you after you said no.
Fair, you're just waiting for me to stop talking.
Yeah, because you're wrong. The AFC West is the toughest division. The Broncos won the Super Bowl like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So whatever, I forget about it because I hate it, but it happened.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
When's the last time the Bears or the Vikings or the Packers won a Super Bowl?
Won a Super Bowl or went? Because the Bears went and lost to the Colts. Green Bay won.
Yeah, when?
I know you weren't counting. The Green Bay won.
Yeah, when?
2007?
Centuries ago?
So, yeah, it's been a while. It was with Aaron Rodgers, though. Same quarterback. They can still do it. When was the last time the Chiefs won?
Just recently.
Yeah,
in my heart.
Exactly.
Just recently in my heart.
Fair enough.
1969 just happened last week.
All right. Well, we're not going to dwell on things. We're going to go back and talk about baseball here because I know everyone's been waiting for us to talk baseball. That's been our number one talked about comment is, why don't you guys talk baseball ever? Well, here's your chance. We're going to talk baseball. If you didn't know, their trade deadline expired today right around 3 or 4 Eastern time. I think it was 4 Eastern time. Now, again, we're in the second half of the season. This is where things really start to light up in baseball. This is where you really get an idea of what that playoff picture is going to be and who are pretenders and who are not. We're going to go over a couple winners and losers here. We're not going to go over everything, but we're going to talk about who we thought our big winners and losers are. Do you want to start winners or do you want to start losers, Drew?
Well, I disagree with your first name on the loser list.
But they're not the biggest losers.
But let's start with the losers first.
All right, let's start losers first. My first losers, the New York Yankees. And I'm going to kind of couple this together because it's the same thing. And the Boston Red Sox. Both of these teams, I believe, are going to be playoff threats. I think Tampa Bay, the Red Sox, and the Yankees might be the 3 teams that go as the 2 wild cards and the division winner in the AL. I think they could go and stack it out with 3 of those teams. You saw Tampa Bay make moves. You saw teams like the Astros make huge moves. And spoiler alert, the Astros are the big winner of free agent of the trade deadline. We'll talk about that in a minute if you haven't heard. Obviously, they got anytime you pick up an ace, you're a winner at the trade deadline. But with the Yankees and Red Sox both just passing and saying we're going to let it ride, I think the Yankees are bigger losers than the Red Sox because I think the Red Sox have better pitching. They have bats to go with it. Even though the Yankees have had their bats be on fire, this is where you add the pitcher. And I know they were trying to get Robbie Ray. It just didn't materialize. And because things fell through and your rivals and everything got better, I have to call it a loss for the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm with Sharif. He's saying the Yankees are fine, and I'm agreeing. But, you know, that being said, these last, stretch of 7 games, and we've won, 2 of them. And not only did we lose a bunch of games, we got stomped by the Red Sox. It's not exciting. But I'm agreeing with Sharif. I think they'll be perfectly fine. I think it's just a matter of course, we all know this in baseball, who gets hot last. That is the most important thing. If you catch on fire and you start streaking and pitching well, that's who wins.
It absolutely matters, but you can also do stuff that's going to help you, like trading for Zach Greinke and having him pitch with Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander, so you've got 3 aces. Again, the Yankees, if they would have added Robbie Ray like they were talking about, and all the rumors were that they were pursuing him, I would have said the Yankees are big winners here because they got better at their weakest point, which is the starting pitching. But I think that's the team's biggest worry. I mean, even when you've got someone like Masahiro Tanaka getting slapped around by the Red Sox, I said he was averaging 36 in the ERA category against the Red Sox. you might have to play this team in the playoffs. You need another guy.
But
you need
how does
more
he pitch?
pitchers.
Well,
He pitches well against everybody else, and that's fine. They got one great pitcher in Tanaka, unless you're playing the Red Sox, who that is definitely a possibility. I think you got to look at things and say, we need more pitching. This is usually where the Yankees shine, is they're not afraid to go out and add whoever they need to add, cost be damned. Instead, they said, we'll just let it ride.
I mean, Sharif again makes another great point. Said the Yankees had 18 players hurt, and they were in the top 5, and now they're healthy. I mean,
and now they're losing. And we said before, it's streaks in baseball, right? Streaks
yeah.
in baseball. I'm not saying hit the panic button, Yankees fans out there, but I am saying when your rivals and teams that are arguably higher up than you, like the Astros, when you talk about a complete team with the pitching that they have on top of their batting order, which is maybe not quite as good as the Yankees, but also still pretty formidable, when they're getting better and they're adding aces, not just good pitchers, not rotational guys, not like the 4th or 5th man in the rotation, they're adding another ace to their squad, it's a little bit of cause for concern.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I mean, the Astros were already, a scary team to begin with, and they got a lot better. And that's the reason why we have them almost at the very top of the list of the winners. If not, they are the winners of the trade deadline.
Oh, they are. I think you have to say they are. I mean, let's move on, though. Let's talk about a couple other losers. I want to touch on the Dodgers because I think they're a loser. I think they could have used somebody in the back end of their bullpen. They've been struggling with closing pitching. Even if it would have been a setup man, if you didn't get a legit closer, if they could have had somebody that can help towards the bottom end of innings, the 8th and the 9th, to help close things out, they're still one of the top teams in baseball, right? Everyone on their power rankings is like, watch out for the Dodgers. They're still a great team. I just would have liked to see them add a closer. They could have been like the Braves and gone and traded for Shane Green, a winner in my book. I think they could have gone out and grabbed one of these young and upcoming closers that had a breakout year. You go into the playoffs with him, and all of a sudden you can go pound for pound with a team like the Astros, or pound for pound and have that advantage on a team like the Yankees because you've got the pitching to go with it. Instead, they kind of kept their hands back and said, we're just going to roll with the guys we have. Maybe that makes sense down the road.
Sometimes you don't mess with the chemistry, man.
And you keep all those prospects. That's huge.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That definitely is a big thing. As much as we're going to talk about the Astros and what they've done for this year, we also need to talk about what they're giving up. Because when you're just punting all these prospects out the door, and you're betting on this 35-year-old Zach Greinke and 36-year-old Justin Verlander being your starting pitchers if Garrett Cole walks like everyone thinks he's going to at the end of the year, that's worrisome in itself, right? You're going to have a very, very... Even though you get 2 aces, they're both very old.
Joey's watching throwback, Rose Bowl throwback of Georgia versus Oklahoma 2018. He said, what a classic. It was a good game.
Absolutely, and Thomas is right. The Reds did get rid of Scooter Gennett, sending him out to the Giants. They also ditched Yasiel Puig. I'm sure everyone's heard about that. They traded one attitude problem for Bowers from Cleveland. Another guy that has been some attitude problem. At least he's not fighting guys, right? At least Bowers isn't fighting anybody. He's just throwing the ball over the wall.
That was part of the trade.
Yeah, exactly. So, interesting move by the Reds. I'm not 100% sure what they're doing. They're still technically in the race. Do I think they're really going to realistically compete? No, I don't. I think they're a team that's probably the odd man out when it comes to where they're at in the division and what they've done in free agency. This move to me is about rebuilding, and this is about 2019 and 2020, or sorry, I should say 2020 and beyond. This is about setting up your pitching and getting back to a level where you can compete with some of these other teams. I mean, they've got it tough out there in the NL.
Sharif is calling us out. He's saying, how are the Dodgers losers? They are 32 games over 500. Also, 71
because Kenley
wins.
Jensen can't close. Kenley Jensen can't close. That's why. It's great when you're killing somebody by 8 runs, but when you get to the playoffs, you're going to need a closer. You're going to need that clutch.
It's not. We're calling the Dodgers losers. We're saying
they're the losers of the trade deadline.
The trade deadline. That's
right.
Yeah. I don't think the Yankees are losers. I don't think the Red Sox are losers.
I just said they're the second best team in baseball before, didn't I? They're still all the way up at the top of everybody's power rankings.
They did not approve their roster, but that's also why I said sometimes you just don't mess with chemistry, meaning the Dodgers are playing well. Why try to add a different kind of personality, trade away players when your team's succeeding? But we're talking about the trade deadline. That's what we're getting at.
Because their closer's Kenley Jensen right now, and you need somebody better than that coming out of the pen in the playoffs. Like, look, you set him up. You have him as one of your setup guys coming out of the bullpen. I'm okay with it. But when he's struggling, and you don't really have any kind of other answers out there to close games out, you need that in the playoffs. Playoff baseball is all about that bullpen when you get your studs, and it's about your starting pitching. Bats are great, but bats come and go. It's hard to bet on your bats through a 20-game stretch when you're talking about the playoffs. That's why I'm going to say they're still losers in my book when it comes to the trade deadline. We'll move forward here. I want to talk about a couple more teams as losers. The Mets, I think, are losers picking up Stroman, not really moving Syndergaard. I mean, this is a team that should be giving up or at the very end trying to acquire prospects. It's also a team that should have been going after bats. So what do? They trade good prospects away to go get another pitcher that, even though he's not a bad pitcher, is having one of his better years right now. Probably isn't an ace by any stretch of the mind. I think when you look at Stroman coming in for them, it's like you gave up 2 of your top 10 prospects to get this guy. Why? Like, are you just going to go on a spending spree in free agency? That's the only way this makes sense, is if you go and buy 3 or 4 bats in this offseason and then all of a sudden try to rebuild the lineup like that. For years, they've had DeGrom. They've had Syndergaard. Bring in some hitters and help these guys out. So what do? Trade for another pitcher. And I'm still over here scratching my head, Drew. I don't. They're my biggest loser. They are. Because when you're building a team and then you're going to go punt 2 of your best prospects away.
Is getting rid of Syndergaard not also a losing move, though? I get he's not happy.
If you get like 4 prospects, like the Diamondbacks did, this is why the Diamondbacks are on my thing. I get it. If you get 4 or 5 prospects for a younger pitcher like Syndergaard, that even though he's not the guy that everyone, he hasn't quite lived up to. I don't even say hasn't lived up to, but he has not been as sharp of late as you kind of expect Syndergaard to be. Trading him isn't that big of a deal. You still have DeGrom, who is the better of the 2, and you still have other pitchers on the staff. Go get a couple bats or go get a couple of great prospects for this. Go get 4 or 5 guys, and hopefully 2 or 3 of them hit, and all of a sudden, 3 or 4 years from now, your team is rebuilt and you're ready to win again. Right now, having Syndergaard and DeGrom doesn't help you when you can't score.
No, I agree. We talk about keeping aces in your bullpen, in your lineup, and you're talking about trading one off is a loss. I mean, I get it. I'm just looking at a different perspective. It's maybe they're going to sit there and try to work it out, make them happy. You know, maybe they got some other plans in there, but of course I say this all again, and it's the Mets. So,
and I'm with Sharif. They have a horrible front office, and they strike again, right? That's why they're my big loser.
That's why I sit there saying, and then again, they are the Mets.
One final one that kind of like made me scratch my head. You saw the Giants add guys like Scooter Gennett, but then also trade away pitchers and everything, like Melancon and everything. I don't know what they're doing too. Either buy or sell, like pick a lane. Either we're going for it because they're only a couple games out right now. Go for it. Go add some people. Trade away some of your prospects to buff up the roster, or sell and say it's okay that we can get rid of all these guys because, you know, we're giving up on this year. Just pick one or the other. They're kind of like doing both, and I think they're kind of juggling a little too much. I'm not really sure what the plan is out there in San Fran. I do like that they hung on to Bumgarner, though, because I still think he's one of the better pitchers in the MLB. I think you can still build around a guy like Bumgarner, even though he's getting a little bit longer in the tooth these days. You don't have as long to win with him. I still think that's a fine move, though. I don't think the Giants are that far out. I don't.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Thomas says 3 of our pitchers were all-stars in the last few years. I mean, he's talking about the Mets.
Is he talking about the Mets or is he talking about the Reds? Because he was talking about the Reds before. I'm pretty sure he's a Cincinnati guy.
No,
if he's talking about the Reds, if he's talking Reds, I will say this: adding another, you can never have enough starting pitching. That's the moral of the story. That's what wins championships, right?
Talking about the Reds, I mean, they made a good move.
In which move? Bowers and moving Yasiel Puig. Yeah, I like Puig. I like Bowers. It's one of those lateral kind of moves that now they have a pitcher instead of a hitter.
They got an attitude problem gone.
And got a new one. Because Bowers had an attitude in Cleveland.
Yeah, but mildly less.
He's not punching anybody, but he's just throwing temper tantrums. I don't know. I like the move for Cincinnati. I'm not going to say it was great, but I'm not going to say it was bad.
It was the Reds. I'm sorry, Thomas.
It's all about what you prefer. And I think having starting pitching is still the way to go in baseball, even though it's not fun to watch, right? It's always fun to watch the Yankees just kill somebody because they're ripping all those runs, or you like to watch the teams that have the great bats. Get a couple hitters, put together a good staff, and you can win a World Series. And then maybe one or two guys to come out of the pen. That's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
Not hard. Just kidding. It's very hard.
It's extremely hard.
Exactly. But that's all you need to do. We'll move forward. Sean, good to see you, man. We're glad you're here. Glad you're here today. And I did get Thomas's thing saying the Reds. I know you read it too. I know. But I just want to gloat.
No, you were right.
Say it again. Real slow into the microphone, please.
You were wrong.
Thank you. Also, Sharif says reinstate Pete Rose. I'm not sure he could help the Reds too much these days, but I get where you're coming from. Let's talk about a couple winners, and then we'll go into the Vikings here, Drew. Winners for me. Obviously, the Astros take the cake. I'm not even going to disguise it. Normally, we go bottom to top, keep that kind of suspense going. The Astros won. You now have 3 aces on this, and I know Garrett Cole's odds are out of the franchise here coming up, or he's going to leave after this year, but you're going to get to play these playoffs with 3 aces. and you've got that, you can shrink your game down to a 4-man rotation, and you've got 3 guys out there. Like, Greinke has like a 2.8 ERA right now. Greinke is lighting the world on fire from the starting pitching position. They are going to be one of the toughest teams to match up with. This is like the nightmare scenario for anyone. This is where you want to be the Yankees, where you're cruising in at that 2 seed, and hopefully you can dodge them and let somebody else try to knock them off first.
Okay. I like Greinke, okay? Former Royals, watch him up and coming, becoming one of the all-star pitchers. But one of his struggles is in postseason.
I get where you're coming from. He's had some good games in the postseason.
Yeah,
I get where you're coming from.
But it's where struggles come from. He'll have a killer regular season, and in that postseason he seems to struggle just a little bit, not all the time. You're saying there for sure now winners in your book?
Oh yeah,
for the World Series
because nobody has Zach Greinke or that level guy as the 3rd guy coming out of the rotation. Nobody.
I agree. I see it.
This is the best starting pitching staff in baseball.
Then again,
you could put me as the 4th guy and those other 3 guys out there, and you're still like, we can give up Game 4, go on a 4-man rotation, and still win the World Series. I mean, they are set up.
You would just get line drives in the face,
and killed. Yeah, yeah, exactly, Drew. I mean, you could go with anybody out there on the mound. It could be anyone at all as that 4th guy. If you put someone out there semi-competent, he doesn't need to be good. If he's semi-competent and you go in with a 4-man rotation, you can win the World Series with these 3 guys. And it's the short-term thing. Like I said, it cost them 4 prospects to go out and get Zach Greinke. So they're betting it all right now, and they're also betting on having Greinke going forward and having Verlander at 36. So we're talking about a 35 and a 36-year-old that are going to be your aces next year. They're all in right now. They want to win in 2019. They're not so much concerned about 2020 and beyond, I guess.
Shreve, I don't like the Astros, okay? I don't want to hear it anymore. No, I'm just kidding, man.
But I'm with Sharif here. He says Greinke has all the run support in the world.
I get it, man. It drives me nuts, okay?
They're the Mets, but they have bats.
I need number 28 in my life, and that's 28 World Championships. I need it.
No, we don't.
Yes, I do. That. I need number 28.
All right. Also, I'm with him, man. Having Cole, Greinke, and Verlander in Game 3 in the playoffs, yeah, that's super deep, especially when you're talking about a 7-game series and both 2 or 3 of those guys are going to pitch
twice.
Hope not. That's going to be killer. That's absolutely be killer.
I hope it's like one of those all-star teams that flop on their face.
I haven't seen it yet. Let's go through a couple other winners.
Other sports we have.
Yeah, but not baseball. Let's go through a couple of these winners real quick. I think the Diamondbacks are winners for trading, even though it's Zach Greinke. And like I said, I think it was a good pickup for the Astros. But getting 4 prospects to an already deep farm system, not to mention they're shedding a 6-year, $200 million contract for a 35-year-old pitcher. They got to be winners, right? Because they're going to have a lot of money. They're going to be able to throw around in free agency if they choose to do so. They're also going to have a bunch of these up-and-comers to join an already deep farm system. The Diamondbacks are winners. This is a move that it's one of those rare trades that really works out for both teams really, really well.
Problem is getting people down in Arizona.
Well, you don't need to do that when it's baseball. You don't need to do it in free agency. You're right. It will be harder to spend that money, but I think if that farm system comes alive, maybe they don't buy someone this year. Maybe they wait a year, hang on to that cash, and then say, we're going to invest after some of these guys come along. You have a couple of these stars come up, and then all of a sudden it's easier to convince somebody, hey, you get to be my guy because we're a much deeper team than we were.
There's a lot of if involved in
Welcome to baseball, right? I mean, it's all about if this guy pans out.
Corey says the Braves need better catchers.
Yeah, I mean, they could use work at the catcher position, but catcher is such a commodity in baseball. It's so hard to get a guy that's like multifaceted as a catcher. Either you have a guy who can field, or you have a guy who can hit, and he's a liability behind the plate. He doesn't have the arm you want, whatever. It's tough getting catchers, man. Catchers are really, really tough. And they're also, when you have them, you don't trade them.
You don't let them go.
Exactly. I think the Braves did well. They're also on my winners thing. Let's talk about them really quick. Them adding to this bullpen, when you're talking about them being 6.5 games ahead of both the Reds and the Nationals, I think it's fantastic. I think they needed this kind of backup. Shane Green, to me, is the steal here. Getting him off of Detroit, bringing him in. He's an all-star, Drew. He was an all-star this year. I think if you get that consistently out of this guy, and now you have another 4, 5, 6, 7 years worth of solid closing pitching out of this guy, sky's the limit. I think the Braves are setting themselves up nicely here.
Sean says the New York Yankees need more out of Luis Severino.
Severino.
Yep. I'm terrible at words. All right, I can't spell, I can't read. Aaron Judge needs to do better. Man,
you don't have Aaron Judge to hit for average. You have Aaron Judge to rip you 40 to 50 bombs a year.
It's just a slump, man. Sean, it's just a few few games, man. Just put them underneath the belt and move forward. There's a reason why, they're, doing as well as they are with the injuries they dealt with. Like Sharif says, man, the Yankees will be fine.
All right, Cody, man, good to see you too. Go win that beer pong tournament, man. We're rooting for you. Also, Sharif says mid-relief pitching will be key down the stretch. I assume he's talking about the Yankees. Yeah, that's why I'm saying you should have added, right? Isn't that my thing? It's not just mid-relief for them, though. I'm not even worried about the stretch. They're going to be fine. They're, 7.5 games ahead of Tampa Bay? 9 ahead of the Red Sox? Somewhere in that kind of ballpark?
Yeah.
They're going to be fine getting to the playoffs. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is when you go into the playoffs and everybody's a good team, and we're talking about the finest of margins because it's baseball, you want to have those studs coming out of the pen. I know they have Chapman, and I like Chapman, but we've seen the Cubs almost lose when they just put everything on Chapman, and now he's a couple of years older. I think you need to focus on bringing in another guy or two to that bullpen at the very least. If not, you should have focused starters because, again, you're going to be going up against great lineups. If you go out there and you have 2 or 3 or 4 kind of guys that aren't prepared for this, you're going to struggle to win these series. I think even the Red Sox have kind of showed that here lately. When you put bats up against the Yankees, you can't just bet on your bats being better than somebody else's. Not when they have the better pitching.
Right. James, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us.
He also meant the Braves, and I agree, man. I think they did great. I think they brought in Melancon from the Giants. They also brought in Chris Martin, another right-hander for the bullpen. The Braves brought in 3 relievers. They knew what they had to focus on, and they did it. Yeah, it cost them in the short term, or in the long term, trading some prospects to get these guys. But I like this move. I think they did a good job of shoring up this bullpen right now. If you're in win now mode, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Maybe they think they can beat the Dodgers. I don't know.
Corey says he thought getting Josh Donaldson was a mistake, but he'll be the first to say he was wrong.
I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you there. I think you're 100% right, but obviously it's worked out for them. I think going forward, my question is going to be, can he keep it up? Because like I said, we've seen Donaldson go through rough patches in the past. I think he's good. I still believe in the move. I still believe they're going to be fine with it, but the question to me is, does Donaldson stay producing, or do we see him kind of take those steps back, or do we see inconsistency?
So he's also going to go off and say, can the Braves keep the lead in the East?
Yes, because they went and added their bullpen. Yeah, I know the Nationals did too, before everyone's saying, hey, watch out for that. They are still winners in my book for shoring up their bullpen. But I also think when you look at them bringing in guys like Elias and Hunter Strickland and Daniel Hudson, those aren't as good names as the Braves brought in. I think the Braves did the same thing that the Nationals did, but better. I also look at they have guys like Freddie Freeman and Donaldson and everything. They're going to be better. And Acuna, let's not forget about Acuna. They are going to be better than the Nationals are going forward. I think the 6.5 game is going to be too much for teams like the Nationals and the Phillies to close. Maybe one of those teams can steal a wild card spot, but when you look at the Brewers and the Cubs and the Cardinals and the way those teams are playing, I don't think so. I think those are 2 teams that are the odd men out.
All right, I got a couple more questions. Paul says, what do you guys think about the Twins?
I thought about putting them on the loser sheet because they didn't make significant moves going into the trade deadline. I think the Indians moving Bowers will let them win this division by default. And obviously no one else there is a threat. Like the White Sox, the Twins, and I'm drawing a blank. White Sox, Twins. Who am I missing out of the Central? For the AL. Central, thank you for your help. Nobody's within 20 games of these guys. Tigers, thank you. The Tigers are they're so far behind I forgot.
I gotta put them all of the teams in the right area.
Yeah, so it is a 2-horse race. I think they're 3 or 4 games up on the Indians right now, but the Indians just lost one of their weakest spots at starting pitcher. Bowers was the guy for the Indians, and I know the plan was always probably to trade Bowers because the Indians are a farm system team where we're not allowed to have nice things that we just let them go elsewhere. But I think when you look at things, I think the Twins will be able to hold out now because even with Yasiel Puig coming in, there's a chance he gets suspended here. I think the Indians aren't going to have the firepower in the bullpen, at starting pitching to keep up with the Twins. I think the Twins will win almost by default. Do I think they make it far in the playoffs? It's going to be tough beating those AL East teams. That's all I can say.
No, it is. James says, what do you all think about Mass and Bumgarner going to Houston?
Well, it's not going to happen now. If you meant Zach Greinke going to Houston, amazing move. Are we talking about later on, or are we talking about at the trade deadline? It didn't happen at the trade deadline. The Giants chose to hang on to him.
Yeah.
Do I think Houston could land him? Potentially, especially when we're talking about someone like Garrett Cole realistically leaving their roster. I think that'd be a great guy to go after. I like Madison Bumgarner.
I guess I'll ask you this. Do you think that was their first pick and Greinke was their second?
He would be mine. I mean, when you talk about the age difference, I think Bumgarner's 31 or 32. I mean, in baseball, that's a huge difference. 35 is usually.
James said later on.
Okay, later on. Yeah, it's. Do I think he'd want to? I would, but they're also paying a lot to Zach Greinke now. That was like a $200 million contract they just picked up for a short term, like only 6 years, and then they're paying Verlander on top of it. I mean, the talk is already Garrett Cole doesn't want to stick around, and they're probably not going to have the money to go offer him a huge, massive contract. I just don't see Bumgarner settling for the money that I think the Astros will more than likely be able to offer him. I think more than likely Bumgarner's going somewhere else instead of the Astros.
Hopefully the Yankees.
The Astros need to get younger, is the thing. It's starting pitching. They need to get a stud that's like 25, that's like maybe a bit more of a developmental guy, but can pitch behind Greinke and Verlander and eventually turn into that number one ace. Right now, I think they're going to get younger in the pitching department. You're betting on two 35-year-olds.
And then Paul,
pick a sport and tell me that's a good plan.
We do got to move on to the Vikings. We cannot.
Bowling is a good sport.
We cannot push them on, but Paul's got one more question for you. He says, what about the pitchers that the Twins just picked up?
I mean, it wasn't anything particularly... It wasn't a massive move. They added a few guys. I don't even remember who it was they added. I remember reading the move, and I was like, it's okay. Like, it's a depth move. When I saw this, I was like, the Twins are picking up guys to the bullpen and picking up pitchers that are going to make a bit of an impact, but you're not picking up a stud. It's not like the move that I'm like, okay, I can see them beating the Yankees. I can see them beating the Red Sox or the Tampa Bay Rays. I think when you look at the Twins, they had a great season. I didn't pick them to be up there. I thought the Indians were going to run away with this division because I didn't think anyone was going to be quite good enough. The Twins, to me, were the surprise for this year. But unless they have like that Cinderella run that they had at the early part of the season where they jumped way out on everybody, unless they get that at the end of the season, I think the Twins are one of those teams that maybe they make it through the first round because they won the division, and maybe not. They probably don't make the ALCS. Yeah. They'd have to upset somebody. I think they're just not quite as good as everyone else in the AL.
They have a longer road than the rest of them do, or a tougher road than the rest of them do. If we're moving on, I got one more question for you, and then we're gonna move on to the Vikings for sure, guys. Sorry, I know you want to talk baseball, but we got to get the Vikings. We pushed them back last show.
Let me just hit a couple more comments. I know I'm always that guy, but let me just go to Corey's thing. They didn't give up a ton for Green, but they gave up a lot for what he can bring to the table. He was a prospect.
That was the question I was going to give you.
Okay, well, there's one more I want to answer here. James wants to say, what do we think about Kirk Cousins this year?
Well, I was going to add that in.
That is the perfect segue.
I was going to add that in. Well, just let me do it.
Aren't you a professional?
Let me
the segue.
You stop my professionalism.
Right.
Listenism.
Professionalism.
No, I make my own words here.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So that being said,
you ready to talk Vikings?
Yeah.
All right.
Where my bread and butter is.
My Cubs are winners. I'm going to go over this real quick. Picking up Castellanos. Good move. They needed an average guy. Guy has more is tied for the lead in doubles in the past 3 seasons. The only guy better than him is Mookie Betts. Double machine. They need guys on base for those power hitters like Rizzo Bryant and drawing a blank on the big dude. Oh, man.
I wasn't even listening to you. I'm sorry.
The Cubs have a bunch of power. They needed guys to get on base. They got that in Castellanos. Good move for them. They also picked up a pitcher. They needed that as well.
Talking about that third baseman?
No, that's Bryant.
Oh.
And Rizzo's first. I'm talking about the outfield. Kyle Schwarber.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I was
I didn't know.
about.
So I wasn't listening to you.
That's okay. Moving forward here, we'll talk about the Vikings. We don't want to dwell on baseball too long. We want to talk football. Bread and butter time, Drew.
Exactly, and we gotta treat the Vikings with respect.
And Sharif had me. He said Kyle Schwarber. Thank you. Hopefully beat him. A couple questions before we get into the Vikings and how we think they did. I guess I'm done with this. A couple questions before we talk about it. He says Sharif says he has a feeling that Cousins is going to go bananas. And then Corey also said, how come Adam Thielen isn't getting any respect on the wide receiver rankings? Because people sleep on these Vikings, man. They do. I think it's that 7-8-1 thing. People always pick the teams that are winning. They pick the teams that win 12 games, and they disrespect great players on teams that don't win.
Well, okay. I gotta pump the brakes on a few things here, okay? Kirk Cousins should go bananas. I know you got a feeling, Sharif, but he should go bananas because he's probably got one of the best receiving duos in the NFL. He's got a great tight end who doesn't like to put up, doesn't put up stat numbers like Kyle Rudolph should. Probably in any other organization, maybe another quarterback, this guy would be flourishing. and it's all kind of based on Dalvin Cook and what that running game can provide. But Kirk Cousins should go bananas. But the reason Adam
Irv
Thielen...
Smith, too. Let's not forget Irv Smith out of Alabama.
Yeah,
Great receiving tight end. He's so small. People were like, I don't know if he's going to be big enough to play tight end. But as a number 2 guy, that's
You're
really,
right.
really quick from tight end, I think watch out for him. The question to me is, can you keep Kirk Cousins safe? Because he's not running away from anybody.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I just was jumping in the Adam Thielen thing. When you're talking about rankings, I'm assuming you're talking about the top 100. We got to remember, this is voted on by the players in the NFL. And to be honest with you, I think the reason why he's not getting as much respect as he should, you nailed it, is because he plays in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's not a big market.
I honestly believe that's the reason why.
It's not a big market, number 1. And number 2, they won 7 games last year. I think when you're not winning and you're not going to the playoffs, I'll give you a great example. Jarrell Casey was in the top 70 in that NFL 100, top 100 or whatever 2 years ago when the Titans made the playoffs. They had that game where they beat the Chiefs, right? Has a better year in 2018 statistically, even though he missed a game. Did better in 2018 than he did in 2017. Dropped into the 90s.
Yeah, no, he did.
So it's one of those things that if you're not winning,
he had arguably one of his best seasons ever last year.
Exactly.
Dropped in rating.
So I think it's if you're not on a team that's winning, these NFL players, whether that's good or bad, they take that into account. And I think because the Vikings had that drop off, they aren't talking about Adam Thielen the way they were coming out of last year, even though we are. I mean, I think everybody's all over Adam Thielen in the media.
He's the better of the two. He's the best receiving option they have.
By a hair, maybe. I like them both.
I like Diggs too.
This is like 1 and 1A,
but
right?
Thielen runs better routes. He has better hands. Diggs might be faster.
Better hands, I'll give you. Better routes. They're both really good route runners. They're
Thielen's
both
better.
really, really good route
I'm telling you
runners.
right now, Thielen's a better route runner.
I don't know. And plus, Diggs does stuff after the catch. I don't know.
He's
Don't ask me
faster.
to pick. Don't ask me to pick. I like them both.
I'm
okay?
asking you to pick.
Don't ask me to pick. I like them both. I'd probably go Diggs. By a hair. Maybe like the smallest of margins. Even though Thielen gets those catches, I think if Diggs wasn't there, maybe we see a little bit of that decline. But like I said, 1 and 1A. You're just be glad you got one of them. And Minnesota has them both. It's not fair. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, nobody catches the ball for more than like 600 yards every year.
Dude, you got
How's this
Corey
fair?
Davis. You like that guy.
I know, future Hall of Famer. Can't wait for that. Oh, man.
Oh,
But
man.
Sharif says the NFC North will be up for grabs this year. We kind of agree with you. We didn't know where to put the Vikings when we were talking about them.
He also said the Vikings have a great O-line.
They
and
don't.
will give Captain Kirk time, and Cook will have lanes to run.
That's where you lost me. The great O-line thing. If not for the Houston Texans last year, we'd be talking about the Vikings being one of the lamest and most pathetic excuses for an offensive line. Did they try to fix it? They did. They signed Josh Klein, who, despite a disappointing 2018, looked pretty good in 2017 for the Tennessee Titans when he was playing for a contract. Now he's not quite so much playing for a contract.
I can't use the word great.
It was good. It was very, very good.
Actually,
and maybe great's a little
to
far.
be honest, average.
No, it was better than average. Again, we're
No.
talking about the Titans being one of the top lines in 2017. Everyone's talking about like their number 2, number 3. He was part of that.
Average.
Not average. He was part of that. Maybe he was
It
the
was
weak
average.
sister on the line.
No, I'm talking about their O-line, not
So am I.
Oh.
Wait, who are you talking? Who's O line?
Vikings.
I thought you were talking about the Titans.
No.
I was like, what are you?
No.
Are you trying to tell me they didn't have a good O line in 2017?
No, they had a great O-line.
This is why you gotta listen to me. This is why you gotta listen to me. You drifted off into space.
No, you jumped into your Titans because that's all you can ever think
I'm
about.
talking about Josh Klein. So yeah, I'm going to talk about what he's done in the past and what team was
I'm
he on.
talking about what Sharif said, and he said they have a great O-line. And I
No,
said,
they're bad.
I
They're
can't
bad.
use the word great.
They got mauled.
Average.
They got mauled. They're not even average. They're bad. They were bad last year. Are they going to be better this year? Potentially. I mean, it's hard to get worse. If not for Houston, this might have been the worst offensive line in football for me. I really think they were terrible. I think they let Kirk Cousins be under pressure way too much, especially when you talk about him versus Case Keenum, and Case Keenum being the guy who escapes pressure, Kirk Cousins being the guy that stands still and throws, just throws whenever he has to.
It must be because you're too busy watching your Titans play, and you're like, man, that O-line's great. Then you watch the Vikings, and that O-line's not that great. Dude, I'm telling you,
Dude, they suck.
You need to go back and watch the film of that O-line. From what they were in 2017 to 2018, they upgraded immensely because they were so terrible.
And what were they last year? When it comes to pressure,
I get-
this is why they lost games. And this is why everyone's like,
I
is
think
Kirk
that-
Cousins even a good quarterback?
I
the
think-
pressure rate they allow.
I think they lost games because of poor play calling.
The pressure, I agree. They could have run the ball more. And they probably would have been more successful. They were okay in the running game, right? And then they just weren't running the ball.
You know what
But when it comes
offensive
to
linemen
pass
love to
protecting,
do?
I don't care what they love to do.
They love to
get
run
paid.
block.
Do you know what they get paid to do?
I get
Protect
it,
the passer.
but you're missing the point here. When you get a chance to run block properly and you get to do it, when it comes to those pass plays, you're more willing to step back and take that punishment as an O-line. They were struggling not getting the right play calling in there.
17, Sharif, not 18. That's what we're talking about. I know they sacked Mariota 11 times. Guess who's a big part of that? Mariota. But guess who else was a big part of that? Josh Klein, who now the Vikings are like, this solves all our problems. To your point, and where you're wrong, Kirk Cousins was like the second or third most pressured quarterback in the NFL last year.
I get it. And you know where his struggles are?
Pressure. Get the pressure off of him, man.
He
He's
likes
good.
to hold the ball too long.
No, that's not it. Not when you have these kind of receivers. They were open. The
I'll
key
agree
is
with you.
get him time. Buy Kirk Cousins time, and you'll be good. This is one of the
That's
worst.
why I said he should go bananas, because he's got one of the best receiving cores in the NFL.
And you know why? Do you know what's holding him back? The offensive line.
Because he doesn't release the ball fast enough.
Part of that scheme, and part of that might be him hanging on to the ball too much, but a lot of that is the offensive line. You buy this guy time.
But
you
then
buy
again,
him
it
time.
falls
That's
back into play calling. You cannot sit there and say that this O-line has not gotten better from 2017. It has gone from garbage to average. I can't use the word great like Sharif did, but this team on the O-line has gotten better.
They were terrible. They were absolutely terrible in 18. That's why the Vikings won 7 games when they were still a good defense. I mean, we're talking about the third-rated defense, and they won 7 games last year.
I'm right there with you. I'm not saying there's problems, but to talk about the
even in the
O-line.
running game, they were 30th ranked in rushing.
Okay,
30th. I get it. They weren't calling the plays.
Right.
They weren't
And
calling
Cook
the
got
plays.
hurt.
But that's part of it too. The part of it, I mean, you can have an average offensive line and you're not finishing 30th. I don't care who it is at running back. If you're 30th, or if your running attack is 30th, the offensive line didn't do enough, and that's just how the NFL works. You can put anyone at running back, any NFL caliber running back. It can be somebody's third running back. Put an average offensive line out there, and you're probably finishing better than 30th. That's all I can say. This offensive line needs to get better. And when Josh Klein is the answer, you still have questions. And that's where I'm going here.
And I'm right there with you, man. The offensive line doesn't have to get better.
All right, what are we talking about? The offensive line.
No, but you're right. They do need to get better. But you're sitting there saying they were garbage. You really got to go back. You got to look at play calling. You got to look at the fact that they're constantly pass blocking and they weren't running properly. These offensive linemen need to have fun too. And I get that. I think fun's maybe the wrong word. But run blocking allows offensive linemen to kind of enjoy what they're doing. And I'm not saying they're not getting paid. And they should just do the job that's asked upon them. But you need to run the rock to allow these offensive linemen to kind of open up what they enjoy doing.
Are you talking to a Titans fan here? I know you got to run the rock.
Yeah, but then you got to have a good quarterback for the ball.
I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback.
Sorry about
I don't know these.
I was talking about Mariota.
Okay, well, you're right there. No argument here. What I will say, I say this all the time. Offensive line takes dramatic swings from year to year. You can keep the same guys. You can get different guys. Offensive lines change from year to year and how they perform. Maybe 2019 they performed better than they did in 2018. But I think when you got to look at it, man, I'm concerned. That's still, if you want to have a successful offense, buy this guy a little bit of time. With these weapons, it's going to work.
Right. No, and don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, their offensive line was great. That's not the problem. No, it's a huge issue that they have, and they need to fix it. But they did get better, and your words were they did not. And Sharif, you got me thrown off again. He says he's going to pick the Vikings to win the North. I can't do it, man. The Bears are so much better, dude. So much better.
You know what the Bears also have? A better offensive line.
They have a great offensive line.
They do.
They actually have a very underrated offensive line.
They also have a better defense.
Yeah.
Maybe by a hair, but they have a better defense. Like I said, this is the third-rated defense in the league last year. I bet people were sleeping on that. I don't think anyone looked at Minnesota and said, well, at least when it comes to yardage, that this was the third best team. The problem is they were 9th in points allowed.
Austin, I'm glad you could join us. He says it for sure was poor play calling.
There's
no doubt
I think
about
that's
it.
a part of it. I'm not saying you're wrong there. I think you guys are right. I think if they would have run the ball a little bit more, especially because this offensive line was built to run more than they were to pass protect, that's fine. But when you're signing Kirk Cousins, you have to know what you're getting. You're not getting a guy that's going to buy any time with his legs. He's a guy that's going to stand back there, Tom Brady-esque, stand still and throw the rock. And when he gets hit, you're going to throw this guy out of rhythm. And I think that's what happened in a lot of 2018. I think that's why they wound up losing 8 games and only winning 7. I think this is one of those things that the offensive line didn't do good enough. And yeah, you can put a little bit on the play calling, but you could also put 70-80% of that on the offensive line not doing their job.
Bees jumped in here as the as our local Bears fan, saying that the Vikings are in trouble, overspending and overachieving.
And underachieving.
Underachieving. I know how to talk. And he says, but he does think they will be in the wild card mix.
And they were last year, right? I mean, even as bad as they struggled, they were in the wild card mix all the way into week 16 or so. Them and the Washington Redskins kind of got knocked out right about the same time, around week 16. I think they will be too. We'll move forward here. Obviously, not a lot of additions. We talked about Josh Klein already. I don't think he's a great player. I think he's a guy from the Patriots that they had no problem letting go, which usually means you worked in our system, but you're not that guy. The Titans let him go as well, and if anyone's going to stick and keep offensive linemen, it's the Titans. I think Josh Klein moving on in 2019, even though it's a fresh beginning for him, he's not a physically dominating guy. He's one of those guys that, as a right guard, can probably buy your quarterback a little bit more time than maybe someone the Vikings already had, but this isn't like a top-tier offensive lineman they're signing. They're signing like a mid-range guy that had one good year with Tennessee, didn't really get a lot of chances in New England, and stunk pretty much the rest of his career.
Yeah.
I'm not bitter about him leaving either.
I got a few more comments here. Steven, I'm glad you could join us. He says, Cousins isn't a good quarterback, average at best. The Vikings offense looked good with Case Keenum. That says a lot. Before you answer that, one thing Case Keenum does very well that I have given him credit for since I've watched this guy play, he can scramble.
Escape pressure. And that's why back when they had their run, things were better because he was making the most of a bad offensive line.
Yeah.
And this goes to my point here. I think that offensive line's been bad for years. I know. And I think that offensive line's been about that bad for about that long. That was 2 years ago, right? Yeah, because Cousins has had 1 year in Minnesota.
Which will now be
this is two.
Three
so
seasons ago.
It will be tomorrow. But as for today, it was 2 years ago. I think when you look at things, the Vikings need to focus on protecting Kirk Cousins. When you need to know what you're getting when you sign big-time free agents. And Kirk Cousins is a big-time free agent. When he had his success in Washington, he was behind a great offensive line. If not great, they were good, right? All the time. Even despite the injuries, they managed to keep this guy safe and in a pocket. When you sign somebody like that, that needs to be your focus. Like, he's not getting away from anybody, so we damn well better protect him.
Yeah, you got to repeat what was going on before.
Exactly.
Austin says the key to the O-line playing outside of talent is chemistry among the starting five. You have to know what the guy next to you is doing so you can do your job better.
Chemistry is huge in the offensive line, Austin. You're 100% right, but it's not always a guarantee. And I got to do it, Drew. Look at the Titans. In 2017, they were a top 3 offensive line, maybe top 5 if you want to be stingy. And then in 2018, with the same group, these same guys, they were, maybe middle of the pack. Like Sharif said, they had games where they gave up 11 sacks. They got dominated at times. They also had games where they dominated with Derrick Henry and other things on top of it. But just chemistry isn't enough. Sometimes it's that chemistry, meeting talent, meeting scheme, meeting just everybody's in rhythm and everybody's playing well. It swings so wildly. Look at Dallas. I know they had some injuries, but Dallas went from being great to not being very good. Unless you're the Baltimore Ravens, it's really tough to be a great offensive line every year. I mean, that's just the long and short of it. And maybe the Patriots you can point to and say Tom Brady's always safe. But a lot of that scheme, when they've been letting guys get back to Tom Brady, they're like, okay, we're going to throw the ball in like 1.5 seconds and get the ball out of his hands, or we're going to run more. It's really, really tough for offensive lines to stay great. It just is. So, love it when you got it. Try to do the best you can to build it, but don't count on it. That's all I can say.
I'm there with you, man. Everything you say, I agree on, which it goes back to the Vikings and their offensive line this year. If they can take what they were doing well and mold it into better, this 2019 Vikings should see a better season. And I'm agreeing with Bees. I'm agreeing with Sharif. They're going to find themselves in the playoff mix. I don't see them winning the division, but a wild card is definitely something they could be taking.
It could be. It could be. I mean, I think the Bears are better, but who knows? Maybe something happens to Mr. Trubisky, and if that happens, it's wide open. Maybe something happens to Khalil Mack. If that happens, the Bears, even their defense, as good as it is, that division's wide open.
Yeah.
Their one injury, just like almost every team in the NFL, is one injury away from making things interesting. That's why we love the sport, right? Because the fungibility. It could be anybody, any given Sunday. That's why we love football.
Yep.
We'll move forward, though. Before we talk about their draft and then get into the schedule here, I want to talk about some of the subtractions. Because despite only adding Josh Klein and Shamar Stephen at defensive tackle, they lost Sheldon Richardson. They lost a center, Nick Easton, which, again, going to Austin's point on cohesion on the offensive line. It's tough to do that when you're losing your offensive lineman. I think their biggest loss, or one of their biggest losses, I think Richardson's their biggest. But behind that, Latavius Murray. We've seen Dalvin Cook in 2 years get hurt twice. Now is where you need that good backup running back, and I don't see that guy who's going to come in and be their number 2 and get this guy off the field.
2 years ago was an ACL.
Right.
Today, in medical surgery, to be honest, when those tendons tear, they repair them. They're usually stronger than they ever were prior to that. Dalvin Cook was not injury prone during college. This is something new to him. So more than likely that knee is better. Not everyone's Adrian Peterson. Not everyone's going to bounce back and have a killer year the year before. He's going to be focusing on that leg, and he got a hamstring issue, which really held him up all last year.
And far be it from me to crap on Dalvin Cook. I think he's a great player. But I also think he needs to be, not on a snap count, but you need a number 2 with him. And I'll say that about almost every running back in the NFL. Right.
If this
and they don't have that anymore.
This year,
right,
they are relying heavily on Dalvin Cook, and it is the year for him to prove it. You are 2 years away from the ACL tear. You're 1 year away from your hamstring giving you issues.
Watch out for him in fantasy, by the way, because he catches really well, and now all of a sudden his backup that might steal time is gone. But
this is
from a football perspective,
this guy
not a fantasy perspective.
should have a huge year because it is all going to be put on him, and he should be 100% healthy as well.
Right, but from a football perspective, and as like the makeup of a team, I want to see a second running back on there that like, okay, something happens to Dalvin Cook, even if it's someone like Carlos Hyde, I have a backup plan. Well, I know what we're doing here.
And they took that young man out of Boise State.
They just don't have that. He's a roll of dice. But
a lot of running backs are.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. That's my thing. I don't like losing Latavius Murray here, especially when you look at what the Saints paid him. I would like to see him stick around in Minnesota. And I don't think they even used Latavius Murray. But there were times when Dalvin Cook was out where Latavius Murray looked really, really good here because this offensive line can run block, but they can't guard a pass.
But how many times have we said in this show, and you said it more than I have, running backs are dime a dozen?
They are. They are. 100% they are. But I like to have a couple in my back pocket because they're a dime a dozen. And now I just don't have that guy to believe in. Maybe, like you said, they have the Boise State running back that can come in and take over if something happens to Dalvin Cook or if Dalvin Cook needs a rest. Right now, I still see it as a weakness. Couple quick subtractions, and then we'll go schedule here. Drew.
Hold on, before you go into those, Neil, I'm glad you could join us. He says the Vikings are going to battle the Bears at the top. It's going to be competitive in that division. Could be another year when the NFC North has 3 playoff teams.
And let me give a shout out to Ian. Because Ian's been the guy that's like, watch out for Detroit. And we were even like, we like what Detroit's done. Did. And then they went and signed Mike Daniels from Green Bay, their best defensive player from last year.
That's actually my fault, Ian. I saw your comment, and I didn't mean to ignore it, but he said...
We even gave you a shout out in the last one, too.
He said, he's going to call it again. He said Detroit's going to win that division.
It's now a 4-horse race. I think Mike Daniels can be that guy. This was the defense for the Green Bay Packers last year. Mike Daniels, pretty much. And now you're putting him next to Snacks Harrison and Trey Flowers in that defensive line. They're going to be good in the defense. They got a couple linebackers. They have Darius Slay at cornerback.
They have that young rookie that we keep on forgetting.
Byron Murphy.
They
are building on that defensive side. Matt Patricia is slowly but surely putting that defense together. I was ready to dismiss the Detroit Lions a couple weeks ago. Now with Mike Daniels on this team, their interiors can be really, really hard to run against. You're going to have to run to like one side or the other, whichever one Trey Flowers is not lined up on. This is gonna be an interesting division to watch. Like I said, Sharif, before, this is the best division in football now. Because all of a sudden, every one of these teams is I don't want to call Detroit a contender quite yet, but you've got 3 contenders and a maybe contender in Detroit.
Sean's saying the Buffalo Bills are going to have a better year than last year, and he's also saying New England...
Oh, we're talking about him Friday, Sean.
...is not going to do...
Be there for that.
Right, we are. And he said New England is not going to do as well as they've done in the past years. I don't know if I can say that, man. I'll give you this. The Bills will have a better year than they had last year if they can create chemistry. That's a lot of adding on. That whole offensive line is completely redone. A lot of new receiving options. Their running backs are older but durable, and Frank Gore, not McCoy, and that defense has always been stout. But to sit there and say that the Patriots aren't going to have a good year, how many times have we been saying that?
About 8,000. And how many times they proved us wrong? About 8,000. Wrong? 8,001.
8,00001.
Yeah,
Somehow
exactly.
They've done it better than what we thought they were going to do.
Exactly.
I can't say it, Sean, man. Until I see them below 500, I can't say that.
James is with you. He's all in on Dalvin Cook this year. He says he's going to be good and healthy this year.
Patriots are going to win their division. Sorry.
Yeah.
Patriots are going to win that division.
Yeah, sorry, I'm shifting gears here. Back to the
you are.
Vikings. I'm with him, though. I think Dalvin Cook will be good. Healthy, I want to see it. I don't want to see too much on him. I know he was good at Florida State. He was one of those guys that you could always rely on, but college is a different game, especially when you're talking about any conference outside of the SEC. When you're talking about the ACC and some of the defenses they play in, it's not like the NFL where almost everybody's good at defense, or they have guys who are going to hit you hard. I think Dalvin Cook needs to prove it this year. Like you were saying, this is a prove-it year for him a little bit.
It's a huge prove-it year. He has no reason not to be healthy.
Absolutely. I mean,
last year was a give up because of his ACL tear.
It happens. And sometimes it takes 2 years to come back from those ACLs.
Well, you overwork your leg and you pull your hamstring. That's or you don't pay attention to the other leg and you pull that hamstring. It happens all the time. I
agree. I totally agree. All right, we'll move forward here. Going into the schedule, I think we got to do it. They lost Sendejo. They lost Aloka. They got questions at safety.
We never got into their draft. Do we want to talk about their draft? Sorry to interrupt.
Quickly.
They did get a replacement for Nick Easton, which I think, to be honest with you, he might not even start down in the Saints.
They're also talking about Garrett Bradbury maybe playing guard because they haven't liked what they've seen. I saw that earlier today, too.
I know. I'm just saying there's a reason that they were willing to let Easton go. They thought they found their guy in Garrett Bradbury. We'll see what happens there. They also went out and got a tight end that you talked about, who a lot of people said that was not fit in the NFL. I think the Vikings are going to give him a huge chance. I think this one will be the most underrated tight end drafts because there was such high accord with Hawkinson and Noah Fant that people like Irv Smith is gone unnoticed.
I think Irv Smith is in a good scenario. I think if Irv Smith was your only tight end, you'd be found wanting because he's not going to be much of a presence in the offensive line. He'll be easy to chip off the line. But if this is your second guy and you've got someone like Kyle Rudolph in front of him, I think this was like the perfect landing spot. I wasn't even an Irv Smith guy. I was like, this is probably like a third or fourth or fifth round pick. They took him in the second. I still think that's a little high, but his receiving ability can't be questioned. This guy is like 240 pounds. He's fast. He's still got some size. He's bigger than most receivers. I think when you look at Irv Smith coming in to an offense like this, and you got Stephon Diggs to worry about, you got Adam Thielen to worry about, you got Kyle Rudolph to worry about, and Dalvin Cook out of the backfield, we're talking about the fifth option here. This is going to be the guy that maybe not this year, but 2 or 3 years down the road is going to be a danger and a tough guy to cover.
And I do want to get to Austin's comment because I don't want to ignore it. He says, I think either the Jets or the Bills or the Jets are possibly 1 or 2 years away from challenging for that division only if Tom Brady retires.
Yeah, you stole that from me. I was going to say the same thing. I'm 100% with you. And I'm going to say I think the Jets have the chance. I don't really... Look, I hate to tell you, whoever... Was that Austin? I hate to tell you, Austin, I don't really believe in Josh Allen. Not yet. I know he got a lot of things done with his legs, but we've seen that not work out long-term in the NFL, right? I want to see something happen with his arm. We can blame the receivers, right? We can blame the receivers in Buffalo.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about Josh Allen having accuracy problems. And when Josh Allen has accuracy problems... Accuracy is one of the hardest things to work on in the NFL. Usually a guy doesn't get tremendously more accurate than he already is. I think Sam Darnold might be, if Tom Brady retired tomorrow, Sam Darnold, to me, is still the best quarterback in this division.
I'd probably also give it to the Jets as well, but I'm going to disagree with the whole Josh Allen statement. Do I think Josh Allen's good enough to win you a Super Bowl? That's yet to be seen, but could he win this division if Tom Brady retired? I could see that.
Maybe with the Bills. I like where the Bills roster is at.
That's what I'm saying. I can see it.
I can see that too. Okay, let me pump the brakes. I don't know if I don't want to count the Bills out totally. Yeah. I like them better than right now where they're at than the Jets or the Dolphins. But quarterback wise, I think it's Darnold, and then there's still a significant gap between him and Allen. I think if you swapped roles and Allen was on the Jets, it would be pretty ugly, and Sam Darnold would look decent with the Bills, even as bad as those receivers have been. He has no receivers, and he looked good passing the ball to nobodies last year. And this year, the Bills have tried to get a little bit better. They're not quite there yet, but they've tried to get better at receiver. I think Darnold would be the better quarterback.
He looked decent.
And he looked good at the end of the season.
Decent.
Playing against teams like Houston that wound up going to the playoffs.
Decent.
With a bad roster. And that's what you want to see. Decent. Even if it's decent.
Okay.
Right? Even if it's decent. I think he looked good, especially when you're talking about losing to Houston by like 1 point. That's good.
No. The Jets have everything to be excited about.
We never can stay on message.
No, we can't. The Jets have everything to be excited about with their future quarterback, but you cannot sit there and tell me that Sam Darnold's year was a good year. No, it was decent. You saw the things you wanted to see.
Ian's got your tacos too, by the way. He grabbed that.
Okay.
Perfect, man. Yeah, put them in the mail. Put them in the mail.
Or just drive them over. I don't know. Ian, I don't know where you're at. Just drive him over, dude. We're here waiting for him. I'm hungry.
Real quick, couple more comments, and then we eventually have to talk about the schedule here. Neil says the Vikings draft was bad. C+ to a C. I gave him a B. I think Garrett Bradbury's a fine pick. I think Irv Smith, even though they drafted him a little higher than I would have liked to see, it's nice to get receiving weapons. I like Alexander Madison out of Boise State. I think he was an adequate pick. This is, again, what the Raiders could have done instead of blowing a pick on Josh Jacobs, who probably is better. But when you put an offensive line in front of him, how much better? I like this pick much better than I like Josh Jacobs going in the first round. And then on top of it, Drew Samia, offensive guard out of Oklahoma. This is what we needed to see the Vikings do. I think Samia is the pick. I think I think we're sleeping on how good Oklahoma's offensive line was for Kyler Murray last year. I think this is a great move. I think they did pretty well drafting.
Bo says, Bo is back and go Browns. I'm glad you're back, Bo.
Absolutely, man. We're not talking Browns right now, unfortunately. I don't even know if they play the Browns. But I will say this. We both like what the Browns are doing, right? Yep. We both think John Dorsey's done a great job of building those Browns.
Sharif, where you at, man? Where you at? I know also, you got something to say.
Also, Austin says Brady is out in 2 years, 3 tops. I keep saying that, man, but the guy's he's like the Terminator. He never goes away. It never stops. I'm waiting for and we have seen him slow down a little bit. We've seen a couple of years where Brady wasn't able to get it done throwing the ball, and they were willing to run instead, and they changed up their identity.
But Belichick's too smart to let that
always
stop him.
Keeps rolling. They're the Energizer Bunny of the NFL. It doesn't matter. They just keep going and going and going, as much as tired as we are.
All right, let's get into the schedule the Vikings have in 2019, or we'll never get out of here. Week 1 and Week 2, they got a tough matchup against 2 teams that arguably could be in the playoffs.
Absolutely.
You got at home against the Falcons, and then go on the road for a division rival against Green Bay with the Packers. We kind of see this as, a win-loss scenario.
This is a split. If you get out of here with a win, you call it a win. I think the Falcons, with all the injuries, probably won't be as prepared as the Vikings are, who are, if nothing else, cohesive on defense, because these guys have been playing together for years now. Everson Griffin, they've had Xavier Rhodes, they've had so many guys, Anthony Barr, that have played together for so long.
And then Harrison, yeah.
They're going to be ready on this defensive side of the ball. If nothing else, I think Atlanta has some questions. You've got Freeman coming back for the first time. You got offensive linemen who are now trying to get used to playing with each other. I'm going to give the slight edge to the Minnesota Vikings. To me, even if it's not game of the week, even if it's not the most explosive game, this is going to be like one of those games that is still top 2, top 3, because both of these teams are both playoff caliber squads. They're both got a bunch of playmakers on them. I can't wait to watch this one. I think it's going to be great.
Martavius says the Falcons win. He's right. He is not right there with us. I am so sorry.
We gave him a loss.
We gave him a loss.
But if the Falcons win, Martavius, I'm not going to be like, man, how did we get that wrong? I'm going to be like, okay. I think these are 2 teams in a similar spot that are going to be looking at 9 to 11 wins. These are 2 teams that are going to be looking to finish anywhere towards the top end of the NFC, because as tough as this division is, if this was an AFC team, they're probably making the playoffs.
Neil's saying Atlanta wins too. Guys, I just want to tell you guys one thing real quick. This is my sleeper team to win the Super Bowl. We don't think the Atlanta Falcons, together we don't think the Atlanta Falcons are a weak team. We do think...
You don't know I thought that. But you're right.
we do think that it is going to be a minute for this team to start driving again. You got to remember... Dirk Cutter is a new offensive coordinator.
Even though he's been in Atlanta before,
it's still
you've
relearning
still had to work
it's still
with
relearning
Sarkisian for years. Exactly.
Right.
The terminology all just changed.
Exactly. Your offensive line, it's changing as well. Yes, you get Deion Jones back. Yes, you get Neal back. Yes, you get Freeman back. But sometimes that rust, even though you had Jones back earlier in last year, you kind of got to knock that rust off first. And we're talking about a Vikings defense, like you said, who's been together and has been really good. 4th overall.
3rd. Don't sell them short. 3rd overall in yardage.
3rd overall.
Yep.
This defense is nothing to shy at. They have 3 great corners that could cover all your receivers. I mean, and they got a good safety to cover your tight end. This is going to be a tough team to beat week 1. Week 1 is always up in the air. I mean, go back and look
what
at
do I bet on?
Look what the Bucs beating the Saints. I'm just throwing that out there.
The first couple weeks, I bet on cohesion. Weeks 1, 2, and 3, the teams that usually stick together are the teams that have the most success early on. And I think the Vikings have done a good job sticking together. They're going to have questions in the offensive line. Yes, Grady Jarrett might have a couple sacks. Kirk Cousins might be under pressure here. Deion Jones might even be able to make a total impact and just, I'm not going to say take Dalvin Cook out of the game, but really limit him. But there's a lot of weapons in Minnesota, and I don't think the Falcons have the secondary to keep up with all these receivers. I think this has got to be a Viking game. If you're going to have any hope of the Vikings making the playoffs, you got to have that quick start, because we see them losing against the Packers week 2.
Yeah, we do. We actually see them kind of getting a slump against the Packers. They go on the road. They face a division rival. And even though we fully believe in that defense, we believe in what the Packers are doing on defense. And we're thinking that week 2, this team might see a little bit of success to be able to stop Kirk Cousins and that average to crappy offensive line.
Very, very bad. Yes, crappy sums it up. I'm 100% with you there. I'm also with Neil saying Dirk Koetter is better than Steve Sarkisian. This guy had the best passing offense in the league. He was better than the Chiefs, and granted, this is taken with a grain of salt because these other teams tried to run a little bit. He was better than the Chiefs. He was better than the Rams. Guess who was calling the plays? Dirk Koetter. Guess what Dirk Kotter's going to be doing with weapons like Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, Julio Jones, and their tight end, Austin Hooper.
Yep.
And Devontae Freeman, let's not forget, better receiver than Tevin Coleman. I'm just kidding. We decided it was close. I think when you look at things, Atlanta is going to be a dangerous team.
See you, Sean. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Have a good night. Going to this Packers team, though, it's going to be really, really tough to slow down Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. A healthy Aaron Rodgers, more than likely, that's going to be coming in motivated, that's been out of the playoffs for years now, that has all these questions. Even though people have questions about Matt LaFleur's offense, I just want to know how much is he even going to get to call. I think Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't like something, might be like, we're not doing that. We're doing what I want to do.
In week 3, we see him going back at home against the Vikings. We see this as already being
against the Raiders. They are the Vikings.
I'm sorry, the Raiders.
They are who we thought they were, Drew.
We actually see this as a hiccup game. We don't know if it's going to be the 2 games before that really put this team down, or if it's a game ahead of them that's kind of getting them a little scared. Another division rival against the Bears in Chicago. But we see the Raiders coming into Minnesota and beating them.
We do. We do. We think the Raiders come and steal one, right?
We do.
I think it's one of those games that maybe this is the upset.
You overlook
Maybe Josh Jacobs proves me wrong and says, I am a first-round pick.
Maybe
if nothing else, maybe Derek Carr with a healthy offense
and
looks
Antonio
good.
Brown look just like...
And a decent offensive line. They're going to be able to throw. I think when you look at things on paper, yeah, you want to lean towards the Vikings. But coming off a loss on the road to the Packers, the Raiders still have a high-flying offense. If they could make a little bit of an impact and then have a little bit of a pass rush, maybe Cleveland Farrell has a little bit of success against this bad offensive line. Again, go look it up. These guys suck. I think Cleveland Farrell might come out and make a little bit of an impact. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have something to prove against a defense that, while it still has places to move forward, I think Oakland might surprise some people and win this game. Do I think Oakland's a playoff team? Not by any stretch of the mind.
No.
But do I think they're going to give some teams trouble?
Yes.
They're going to beat the Chiefs twice.
Whoa. They're no.
No, they're not. But I'm kidding.
No, but they are going to get teams trouble. They're going to play the Chiefs tough.
Right.
They're going to play the Chargers tough because they're in division. But teams like the Vikings who have real tough schedules around them, they're going to struggle a little bit. Neil says the Vikings are over the Raiders easily, and Steven says he agrees with us that the Raiders are going to win this game.
And on paper, I'm going to give it to you. But I think also the game isn't played on paper. I think when you look at things, there are going to be games you come in with your guard down because maybe Oakland started 0-2 and Antonio Brown lights it up. Or maybe Derek Carr has his best game passing and we see him throw for 360 yards. I still think Derek Carr's a very good quarterback.
No, he's a great quarterback.
I think now they're trying to reestablish them having weapons on offense and making things happen. They still have a good offensive line. Maybe they can run a little bit better with Josh Jacobs. And I don't hate Josh Jacobs as a player. I don't like any first-round running back more than anything. I think running back is a position you get in the second and third round. But they've spent on this guy. They're going to try to get the ball in this guy's hands. And the Vikings have been inconsistent in years past, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is another inconsistent game we see the Vikings drop.
Okay, I must have misunderstood Steven. He did agree on the Packers winning that game, but he also agrees that the Raiders are going to win that game as well.
Isn't Facebook great? I don't even have that comment. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you reading it, but for whatever reason, it's not showing on my screen, and it's showing on yours.
All right, week 4, they do go on the road into Chicago to face the Chicago Bears. This is going to be a tough game, but we see the Bears winning this game.
And we see the Vikings winning this game.
No, we do not.
It's a W on your page for the Vikings.
We do.
We do. Yeah. Okay.
So
anyway, we see that the Vikings beating the Bears in week 4.
I read good.
It's early. Again, even though the Bears have a lot of cohesion on their defense, so do the Vikings. I think this is going to be a slugfest. I think it's going to be one of those games that the Bears, even though they're a very good team, I still have a little bit of questions on their offense. Even though they were decent at offense, they struggled passing the ball a little bit. And I think if you want to beat the Vikings, that's how you do it, right? If you want to beat the Vikings, you throw. You don't try to run, you throw. I think on top of it, even though the Bears have receivers, even though everything else, they have everything you want to see, so do the Vikings. These are two teams that are two of the most complete teams in the NFL. They came off a bad loss to the Raiders. We think they can come back and try to reestablish themselves and grab a win in Week 4 against a division opponent. That's my biggest point, too, is division games are always hard fought. It doesn't matter how good or how bad one team is. Usually these two teams are going to be neck and neck.
We got to remember I was not here for the show with the Chicago Bears. I probably would have fought this as a win for the Bears.
Didn't you pick that with me?
No.
I'm pretty sure we picked it before the show.
Nope.
Well, your opinion doesn't count anyway.
I
so
can tell my opinion doesn't count. And I misunderstood Steven again. He said no, he agrees.
This is why your opinion doesn't count.
Yeah, my opinion's terrible. Guys, I'm signing off. This is Drew, and good luck for the rest of the show.
All right. Going back to it, Steven agreed that the Raiders can beat the Vikings and beating KC. But he's also a Raiders fan. Take that with a grain of salt. The Bears are going to struggle a little bit. The Bears are going to struggle in this game. I think the Vikings match up with them better than even someone like Green Bay that, despite them rushing the passer, are going to have some questions at run defense. I think the Vikings are more complete defense. They're going to challenge the Bears in ways that these other teams in the division can't do it. I think the Vikings take the first match. We'll talk about the second one in Week 17. We'll move forward, though, because things, I don't want to say they get easier, but these next 3 weeks, this is like where you need to shine, right? They go on the road and face the Giants. They get the Eagles at home, tough, but then they go and play the Lions again. Then they go and play the Lions in Week 7. That's a winnable game. Drew, if they walk away with 2 out of 3, you got to call it a win, right?
I mean, yeah, and they're going to win 1, and it's in New York against the Giants. We kind of know where the Giants are sitting.
They're going to win 2. They're going to beat the Eagles.
No, well, they're for sure going to win 1, and that's against the Giants because we know what the Giants are going to try to do, and that's run the rock with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and everyone knows that's what's going to happen, right?
Everybody.
And maybe it's Daniel Jones. It's probably still Eli Manning.
I said they're for sure going to win 1.
And they are, yeah. But they're going to win 2 on our book. We see them beating the Eagles and Giants back-to-back, matching up well against the NFC East, even though we think the Giants have some potential. Maybe this is a potential upset. They don't have the defense that's going to stop these weapons. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? I mean, if they lose this game, I'm out in the Vikings. That's it. Trade Kirk Cousins. Let him walk at the end of the contract. I don't care. You got to beat a defense that has nobody in the secondary right now. I mean, they traded Eli Apple, Drew, and Eli Apple sucks. Or sucked for the Giants, I should say.
He's actually playing really well.
He's playing better for the Saints. Still not a great player.
No, he's playing really well.
For the Saints.
Yeah.
And things are a lot different in this Giant offense, back to my point here.
He is picked on in the Saints against the Saints and when teams face the Saints, and he actually is performing pretty well.
And he was dominated when he was a Giant.
Right.
And guess what? Things have gotten worse.
Yeah.
Olivier Vernon is gone. You now don't have the safety help over the top with Landon Collins leaving as well. I think when you look at things, the Giants aren't stopping the Vikings offense. It can be Dalvin Cook. It can be Dalvin Cook's backup. It can be any of these receivers out there that have a great game. They're going to dominate the Giants. I think this is one of those games.
The Giants are arguably the worst team in the NFL.
Who do we say was worse? Because we're like, they're the best bad team. The Buccaneers are still our worst team. And I know everyone's like, whoa, they got Chris Godwin, and they have, or Goodwin, however you pronounce it, and they also have Mike Evans, and they got Cameron Brate, and they got O.J. Howard. Great. Yeah, so you do one thing really well, which is throw the ball. You also have a quarterback who likes throwing interceptions, no defense, no running game, no offensive line.
Week 6,
no
Eagles,
special teams.
We see this as a win for the Vikings.
We do.
Week 7, in Detroit, we see this actually as a loss and a win for Detroit.
It's tough playing both these teams back-to-back. And sometimes it's the way the NFL goes, where the team you should beat manages to beat you, and the team that's probably more of a challenge is the one you actually walk away with a win. I think the Eagles, both are going to be coming off some tough games. I think this is a square-up matchup for teams that both could make reasonably a playoff appearance, if not a deeper run into the playoffs. This, to me, is going to be one of the better games. We saw the Eagles dominate them back in 2017. There's probably still some bad feelings with this Vikings team. We see them beating the Eagles in Week 6, especially because a lot of those guys were there for that beatdown in 17.
Week 8, they get Redskins at home, and Week 9, they go on the road to Kansas City. We see them beating the Redskins, but losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. That high-flying offense is just going to be a little too much for that defense to stop.
Redskins are too one-dimensional again. I think if you want to beat the Vikings, you got to do both things well. I'd rather see the pass than the run. And what did the Redskins not work on? Their passing game pretty much at all. I know they brought in a new quarterback because Alex Smith isn't going to be there. We saw Case Keenum struggle with Denver. I don't see him doing much better in Washington.
This might be a little bit of a revenge game.
We debated
she's
this
stuck
game.
with me.
We debated with this game. But also on top of it, he's not going to have anybody to throw the ball to. And it takes two to tango.
It does.
And I don't see anyone in this wide receiving core for the Washington Redskins giving somebody like Xavier Rhodes or anyone else in this receiving or in the secondary too much trouble. I think the Redskins lose this one.
Week 9, not much to dwell on. Like I said, that high-flying offense that the Chiefs have, especially in Kansas City, around the loudest crowd in the NFL, it is going to be really difficult for this Vikings to get anything going. We believe at this point in time the Chiefs' defense is going to be rolling. It's going to be anywhere better than the 31st worst defense in the league.
You believe that? I've yet to see it.
We do.
I think maybe, 28?
We believe
26?
We believe that. That's better. All right, Week 10.
Though it's only up from here.
Week 10, they go on the road against
You're not Tampa, but
they go on the road against the Dallas Cowboys, and then Week 11 they get the Broncos in Minnesota. Again, another split of 2 games. They see a loss against the Cowboys and a win against the Broncos.
These are 2 teams that do very similar things. I think the Vikings will match up well against both of them. I think it'll be hard-fought games, but I think assuming Zeke now has some miles under his tires and he's in rhythm and he's feeling things, I think Zeke is going to be too much with this Cowboys offense for the Vikings to keep off the board. And I think this Viking defense is going to get after that bad offensive line I spent 20 minutes complaining about. I think you're going to see guys like DeMarcus Lawrence get back there and just maul Kirk Cousins, who's not going to be able to escape him. Again, I think this is still the weakness of the Vikings is going up against good defenses. The difference between them and the Broncos don't have help up the middle. They're not bad, but they're not good enough. The Broncos need to get better with the run defense. They're good on the edge. I think Bradley Chubb and Von Miller might have some sacks in this game.
And they're good on the corner,
but
too.
But this could be your game where Dalvin Cook just takes over.
No, they're good at corner, too. Week 12, they go on a bye. A great bye for a playoff team, but this team still has a lot of wins.
They got to win some games. Absolutely, and it's tough sledding going here from 13 on. We're going to talk about Week 13 with the Seahawks on the road. We see it as a loss. Further on, they play the Lions again at home, and then the Chargers on the road. That's a lot of time out there on the West Coast. I know you're kind of in the middle of the country, but that's still a lot of travel time. You're playing 2 good teams in their houses. This is going to be tough.
And you split it between coming home and then going back out there.
Exactly. I mean, the Seahawks, the 12th man, we believe, is going to have too much for this Vikings team. But you're going to flip things around when it comes back to the Lions. We don't see the Lions beating them twice. No. Even though they've kind of shored up that defensive front, I think that when you talk about all these weapons they have, maybe they learn their lesson, maybe they throw a little bit more. Maybe Darius Slay can't cover everybody. Yeah. And Byron Murphy's still a rookie. Can a rookie stop Adam Thielen? Can a rookie stop Stephon Diggs? Whichever one you want to pick.
Not
excessively. It's going to be tough.
Not consistently.
Absolutely. I think when you look at 13 and 14, these are weeks that the Lions should be a win. The Seahawks should be a game that you want to win as a playoff team, but they're kind of in the same scenario where they want to make the playoffs too. This could be a tough stretch for them. We see them beating the Chargers, though. We see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit.
This is in L.A. We believe that, L.A. is still going to have a problem with filling their stadium up with just Charger fans. We believe the Vikings can travel well there. And we believe that this team at some point in time is going to sit there and go, we need wins to get to this playoffs. The Chargers might be sitting a little bit better than they are. We don't know.
Right.
But we believe that could possibly be going on.
I also believe the Chargers let their guard down.
Well, I was about to just say, the Chargers might look past a team like the Minnesota Vikings and let a win like this happen because Chargers have known to do that in the past.
Yep. And then the last 2 weeks of the season, they get the Packers and the Bears at home. The best thing I can say is it's at home, right? Because this could be what decides who goes to the playoffs and who doesn't. I think this is a really, really tough stretch for them. If you come away with another win, you're going to see another split. I think that's kind of sums up the Vikings season. There's going to be a lot of splitting. I think they're going to split with the Bears where they're going to lose this game, and they're going to split with the Packers where they beat them too. I think this is one of those kind of scenarios where whether you beat the Bears, whether you beat the Packers, it's not going to matter because both of those teams might be a little bit better at what they do than you and what you're trying to do. I think the Packers are going to be the win here and the Bears are the loss, but this is a tough way to end the schedule, Drew. Chargers, Packers, Bears.
No, it's tough.
This is really, really tough. And we say that about the NFC all the time.
And they're lucky.
But it doesn't get any easier.
They're lucky to get 2 wins out of those 3 games. So that ends the 2019 season of our review of the Minnesota Vikings. We see them ending up 9-7. Definitely a little bit of a bump up from the 2018 where they were 7-8-1. This still might put them outside the playoffs.
This is odd man out. We see them as 9-7. And probably one step away from making it to the playoffs. I just see this as a team that should be better. When you talk about Stephon Diggs, when you talk about Adam Thielen, we're going to be talking about wasted years down the line. Where we're talking about these guys should be playoff guys. They should be guys making deep pushes. We're going to be talking about one of the best skill groups maybe ever in NFL history. When you talk about what Diggs can do, when you talk about what Thielen can do, with Dalvin Cook on top of it, then you got two good tight ends, or at least one in Kyle Rudolph and a could be in Irv Smith. This is a team that should be better, and I think the offensive line is going to hold them back.
All right. We got any final thoughts on the Minnesota Vikings 2019 season, or was that your final thought?
They could win 4 games. They could win 12. I honestly don't know. I think they have questions to answer in the offensive line, but if they get that straightened out a little bit, I'm kind of with Austin. 9-7 won't quite be good enough. They're going to be the odd men out. They're going to miss by a game or two, but we're going to be talking about this team in week 16 or 17 more than likely. That being said, the defense should be good. They were good last year, but not good enough to make an impact. The defense should be great. The offense should be great, and yet somehow this team has found a way to come up short.
Right. I believe that this team is one of those teams where we literally talked about before we started the episode, last episode, where we talked about how do we put this team in 2019. And it was literally from the best in the division to the worst in the NFC. And it sounds ridiculous when you look at all that talent on paper, but after what they did in 2018, where they didn't even break 500, it is a scenario where you go, this team is falling short of what they should be on paper. But hopefully for 2019 and Minnesota Vikings fans, you see a better year out of Kirk Cousins and that offense.
And maybe this is a squad that shocks us. Maybe they win 12 games and they get back to business from 2017, but we've yet to see it. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. Drew has some special thanks here that we want to get to before we get out of here, guys. It was a fun show. Again, I like where the Vikings are at, but on paper doesn't win games. I think this is the team that is the poster child for that.
Guys, thank you so much for all the likes, comments, and shares. It means the world to us. Again, Ian, Sharif, Joey, Thomas, Sean, Corey, Cody, James, Paul, Austin, Bees, Steven, Neil, Bo, and Martavius. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great show. We'll be back on Friday to talk about the Buffalo Bills and what we think their 2019 season is going to look like, as well as everything else going on in the world of sports. So for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you then.